What's up, everyone? Welcome to another week of What You're Missing. We're just going to jump into the news. I had a busy weekend this weekend, so it's late Sunday night again, and here I am recording into the wee hours of the night. And no thanks to YouTube, I will be editing this video at, well, it'll be late. It'll be very late. Anyway, I'll touch more on YouTube in a little bit, but the first item on the list is another simulator. I know that you've all been craving more discussions of simulators like the Goat Simulator and many of the others that you've heard about in the past. I just wanted to give you a quick update because and due to the success of the Goat Simulator, someone has made a rock simulator, and it is what you might imagine. You're a rock, and you get to be a rock in different areas. Like you could be a rock on the sand flats or in the plains or maybe in a forest. So for all of you who've dreamed of living out the fantasy of being a rock, and I have personally joked that some people are no better than smiling rocks, but for those of you who actually want to be a rock or simulate the act of rockdom, this game may be coming for you. So it's on Steam. It's in the green light voting process, and it has to pass a certain threshold, but it's looking like it's going to pass, probably because a bunch of people are like, really, a rock simulator? I'm going to vote that up just because it's going to be hilarious, and hopefully they'll actually make some money off of it. I don't know. It's a rock simulator. So there you go. Next up, going to YouTube. YouTube is planning to provide an update that will support 48 and 60 frames per second videos, which is great, just in the sense that upgrades to the quality of video that's available online and that you can offer as a content provider like myself. More options is better, and higher quality is always better. So for those people that would benefit from it, that's great. In the video game industry, that would be people who are streaming shooters or fighting games or really fast, action-packed games where every little bit counts. I don't know that I would ever notice the difference between 30 and 60 frames, but some people do, and there are going to be a lot of happy streamers and people who play shooters and like to share their stuff. So that's good for them. They've also decided, I don't know, those of you who have heard of Patreon or Patreon, I'm not exactly sure how it's pronounced because I think it's a play on the word patron, because it allows you to have like a little hosted site, and at some point I may do this if it ends up being worthwhile. But it gives you like your own little page where you have an intro video explaining what content you create and whether it's you're releasing videos of you playing songs on YouTube or some of the science channel people, not like the actual science channel, but people who have channels that do little videos on science. Like if you've seen the one on Facebook where I'm totally blanking on the name of the channel. It's pretty well known at this point. But the guy does this experiment where he has a balloon that's filled with helium, and he drives, and he has his kids predict which way the balloon's going to go, and then he fills it with regular air and sees how it reacts differently. Anyway, so people like that would have a site or a little page on Patreon, and you could go, or supporters could go and offer money per month or per video, kind of as a subscription in a way to support the content that they enjoy. So if you really like Kid President, as an example, if he had a page, and he may, you could go there and you could say, every video you put out, I'd like to give you $15, or every month I want to give you $20 or whatever. And so just to kind of give money to the people that you think are doing things that you really enjoy. But anyway, I went down that path just to let you know that, so YouTube is offering something similar now, or they're planning to anyway. They're going to implement this, the ability to tip the creators that you like, anywhere from $1 to $500. So I think that's them basically putting a shot across the bow of sites like Patreon or Patreon, and it'll be interesting to see what happens from there. Next up, The Sims 4, which isn't out yet, but it will be soon, or at least within the next few months. There was stuff at E3 about it, and a lot of people, nobody I know, but a lot of people got really, actually there's probably one friend that I have that would be really excited about The Sims 4. But Um, yeah, so they came out, they showed their game, and the news last week said that they weren't going to have pools in the game at launch, but there was a possibility that it would be added later. And also, they won't allow you to see or follow your children through the toddler phase. I don't know whether it's your children or your sim itself, because I don't know that I want to play a character that's got to go from being a baby to a toddler through, all the awkwardness of growing up. I always thought that you started out as an adult. I don't know. But anyway, it just struck me as kind of amusing. But there are a lot of people who are bent out of shape about the fact that they're not going to be able to be a toddler and they're not going to have pools. Pools I can sort of get. I guess if you want to have yourself an imaginary pool party, you can't have it if you don't have your imaginary pool. So uh, I'm not going to make the joke I was just thinking. I'm just going to let it go because I'm just going to let it go. But that said, with pools and toddlers missing, I sort of feel like they could have only just gotten rid of one, right? Once you get rid of pools, you don't need to get rid of toddlers anymore because the toddlers aren't going to fall in the pool. So no pool, you don't need to get rid of toddlers. Or if you want to keep the pool, leave the toddlers, and then you got your pool, and it's not dangerous anymore. Yeah. See, I thought about it. You didn't think I would, but I did. Next up is sort of a two-part thing. Now, for those of you who worked with me or know where I last worked or some of the ideas that I had when I was there that were not implemented or taken, this will resonate with some of you. So Resogun, I talked about it or I mentioned it in passing last week that Resogun was releasing an update that allowed local co-op and gave you like the ability to create your own ship, give it different attributes, whether it was fast or slow, or powerful guns or not, and it also allowed you to literally build it using like little digital chunks called voxels. So you could create anything. People were making Mario, they were making logos that they were fond of, they were making images of themselves or of people that they knew. I mean, like people's creativity went wild. And so this little DLC add-on was free and it was offered to everybody. And people just went nuts with this ship creator. They were going in there making all kinds of things, and you can download and share them with your friends. You can find like a depository online on the PSN to go and like see what other people have made. It changes the scoring of the game to the point where they had to sort of like stop all of the high scores and archive those before releasing this because new ships obviously kind of allowed people to make a more optimum build that would allow people to get higher scores, which sort of invalidated the high scores that were made on the stock ships that were provided. So anyway, it's pretty cool. So the whole idea that they're sharing creativity was really neat, and it sounds like it's really taken off. Along those lines, in Infamous Second Son, there was a mode that you could get into if you knew about it that was like photography mode. You could pause the game at any point, no matter what you were doing or where you were. If you were in the middle of an ability, you could pause it and then take a picture of it, and not just like here's a quick screenshot. I mean, like they treated it like you were holding a real camera. You could change the f-stop, the aperture, white balance, like all kinds of things on this virtual camera and frame it differently and zoom way out, zoom in. Of course, you were always centered in the picture, but people have been like there are whole forums dedicated to just the screenshots that people have taken with this photo tool, and everyone's exploring like how beautiful that world is and the art in the game and just showing what the game is capable of, and it's really neat. And so there's this huge sort of movement of people sharing and maybe even their first experience with photography in what's going on and what's offered in this game for free. So I think that's really cool, and the whole idea that being able to have some avenue or some channel to express yourself through creativity in these video games and then share it with the world, whether that's just your friends or people at large. I just think that's a really cool idea, and it looks like it's starting to take off. So yeah, that's worth noting. Anyway, next up, and on a For those of you who've been following from the beginning, great. Those of you that haven't been, a few episodes ago in May, I think it was May 5th, I want to say, maybe even the second episode, I talked about there was a town called Marshfield in Massachusetts that was lifting a 32-year ban on arcade games. And I made cracks about how that's really backwards and good for them. And okay, that's true, because 32 years to ban arcade games is really, that's something. But I can't laugh too hard, because just down the road is Oakland, and last week, I guess, Oakland lifted an 80-year ban on pinball machines. So Marshfield's looking pretty progressive right about now. But so there's an interesting story behind the pinball ban. So I guess back in the day when it first came out, people thought that pinball games were pure chance. And the way it was being treated originally is people would play, and then whoever got the furthest in an evening or something, they would get a cash payout, or if they reached a certain point, there would be a cash payout. Kind of like, I don't know, I guess in skee ball, where if you get enough tokens together, you know, you can go buy a big stuffed animal or whatever. But anyway, so they banned it because they viewed it as gambling. And it wasn't until the 1970s that people were able to prove, and so there were bans in a lot of cities like New York and Chicago, but it wasn't until the 1970s that people were able to prove that pinball was a game of skill, which, if you think about it, excuse me, if you think about it, adds kind of a whole new depth to the song Pinball Wizard. And I think that's really cool. So if you haven't heard the song, I guess it's something you should go listen to, but it's not like the best song in the world. But the fact that it ties into sort of the discovery and the proving of skill in this game is pretty cool. So there you have it. Last up, I know that a while back I also talked. There's a lot of like callbacks here. See, this is why you should be a regular viewer, a subscriber, because then you get all these backstories and there's relevance and themes and you can be like, oh, he wore that shirt 3 episodes ago. What's going on? And why doesn't he do his shirt rotation thing like he did when he was working? I don't know. I guess I should do that. But I digress. So at some point I talked about how people like to talk about the proclivity of video gamers to, or at least how video games affect people and make them more prone to do violent things. So every time there's a school shooting, or every time somebody does something like bomb the Boston Marathon, you get ass wipes on Fox TV and other idiot news programs who are saying, oh, you know, they played violent video games before they went out and did that. Yeah, well, so do like hundreds of millions of people over the world, and they're not shooting anybody. You don't think this is just a coincidence? So I always thought that was horseshit. And then I saw an article last week that was, somebody did a psychological study, like kind of, I'm going to call it pseudoscience. Technically it's science because it's like a published report, but it's psychology, and from what I read about it, I'm not really down with their procedure and the like how they came to their conclusion, even though I like the conclusion. But the conclusion was basically this, that practicing amoral behavior in video games, like running over hookers to get your money back in GTA, or driving down the sidewalk just for the thrill of plowing through pedestrians. I'm not saying I've done either of those, but let's just say hypothetically that if I did, that doing that sort of thing or exhibiting that kind of amoral behavior actually makes me more morally sensitive in real life and more prone to what they called pro-social behavior, which is like doing things for other people. So I think that's pretty remarkable. If you believe the study, and you may, then yeah, I think that's pretty cool. So in actuality, the science is saying, or the pseudoscience is saying the complete opposite of what all of these morons have been saying all along. So people who play these violent video games and who do questionably moral things, or morally questionable things, are actually more prone to be decent to other people as a result. So, and it was all based off of guilt and that sort of thing. So I don't know. But anyway, that's all I've got for this week's news, or last week's news. One of these days I'll get that right. And go subscribe, tell your friends, join me in WildStar if you can, because I need more people to play with. And I'll see you next week.